Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Minister, dear friends, I would like to thank you very, very much for joining us today at this tremendous forum. Posidonia, as you all know, is the largest maritime exhibition in the world. And what Posidonia does is showcase the leadership of Greek shipping and its vital role in the global supply chain. And that's exactly what our forum aims to do today, to highlight the tradition, the significance, and the insight of Greek shipping, its vital role in the global economy, the global commerce, the global supply chain. I'm humbled, frankly, to be able to put together the agenda we have today. And I'm grateful to the sponsors. I'm very much appreciative of the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ for supporting this event, and we are honored to have also the CEO of the Athens Exchange with us, Mr. Kontopoulos. So thank you to all the sponsors, and we had a great forum, and we are going to close this forum with a thunder. We have with us a tremendous panel, and I would like to thank each one of them for supporting Capital Link, for what they do in shipping, and for accepting to be with us. This is a panel that we put together at every Posidonia, and I would like to thank each one of them. Also, I would like to thank Sofia, who is the traditional moderator of this panel of EY. So without any further ado, I will let Sofia take over. Just a personal note, if you allow me. I would like to wish happy birthday to Nikolas Tsakos. He had his birthday yesterday. Nico, thank you for a wonderful dinner overlooking Acropolis. And Nikos does not celebrate only one anniversary, his birthday. He celebrates another one with his company 10 celebrating its 20th anniversary as a listed company on the New York Stock Exchange. So thank you to all of you for, by the way, I would like you to calculate by yourselves the power of this panel, the significance of the combined percentage of the fleet that they command in the global industry, and I think that showcases very, very eloquently the significance, the weight of Greek shipping in the world. So thank you to everybody for being with us. And by the way, I share all these good comments I've been hearing today with my sister Olga. I'm just the brother of Olga. She's really the soul of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikola. I wasn't nervous until you just basically said how important this panel is. Now I'm getting nervous. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. This is my fourth time moderating this distinguished panel, and I would like to say that it's probably one of my highlights, and thank you, Nikola, for allowing me to be part of this event. I am Sofia Kalomenides. I'm an EY partner. I am also the CESA Regional Capital Markets and IPO leader. It has been a very interesting day today, and I guess a lot of the topics I will be asking the panel are going to be similar themes that we heard during the day. So this panel is titled Greek Shipping at the Forefront of Global Trade Prospects, Opportunities, Challenges in a Changing World. And we would like to hear the views from the Greek ship owners. I want to welcome formally our esteemed panel members, Mr. John Coustas, Mr. George Economou, Mr. Evangelos Marinakis, Mr. George Procopiou, Mr. Petros Pappas, and Mr. Nikos Tsakos. Thank you, gentlemen. Now, we heard about COVID. We've been hearing about supply chain disruption, sustainability, ESG, geopolitical turmoil, wars. Indeed, these are really changing times. And allow me to say a quote from the author Martin O'Malley that really comes to mind. He said, "We live in a very different world than the one we inherited from our parents and from our grandparents. Times are changing, and states must adapt to win." And you, gentlemen, are coming from generations of ship owners. And what I would like to discuss with you today is what things need to be changing in the shipping industry in order to manage these challenges and really continue winning. Now, I'm going to be asking questions to specific panelists, but please, if you do want to share your views, please join and provide your insights. We'll start off with Mr. Marinakis. Now, there are different sectors we're aware of: dry bulk, tankers, containers, NLG, and they have different fundamentals when it comes to supply and demand. But overall, the current markets or outlook for all shipping sectors are relatively positive. So where do we go from here? Is the strong shipping market here to stay? And how much of this is due to the fundamentals of supply and demand versus geopolitical factors? Mr. Marinakis?
Hello? No? So where we go from now? We can go for vacation. Also, is something that is recommended, and after what we have seen from the beginning of this year, might be appropriate and can be also profitable. But anyway, just to answer your question is that as far as COVID is concerned, and as far as what is happening right now in Ukraine and what we see with the invasion of Russia is something that we hadn't seen in the past, or we hadn't seen any conflict so close to us that took place within very few days, that we all realized that there is a big tension in the region. And of course, geopolitically, this has changed a lot of fundamentals. Fortunately and unfortunately, in a lot of occasions, shipping is heavily related to all these geopolitical changes, and especially when we have wars and such conflict, we see new opportunities and different patterns of trade. Now it has become apparent that European community has decided to be isolated or not to be as dependent as all these years from gas and oil from Russia. Of course, this cannot happen overnight. It takes some time, but I think that the European leaders are making a mistake, that instead of trying to find a peaceful solution that will really solve this big problem and, of course, help our economies, because right now, from all the sky's cost and inflation are suffering, and at the end of the day, the consumer is paying the price. They are discussing about more sanctions to be imposed in Russia and all this. And on the other hand, we see that Russia is selling oil with heavy discounts to India and to China. The refineries in India receiving these huge discounts in crude, and they are selling back to us in Europe gasoline and all the products at sky-high prices. And at the end of the day, we pay the price and they make a tremendous profit. So that means that instead of penalizing Russia, we penalize ourselves, and this is something that sooner or later we will see the consequences. We already see it, and it's something that we have to take in serious consideration, and also point out to politicians that they need to find a solution and not to stop this dispute, because this, as I said, will have very serious effects on our economy, and we're going to have a huge recession in front of us. Going back also as far as the shipping markets are concerned, of course we are optimistic. We have seen that we have seen it in the container trade. Now we have seen it in the LNG because of what's happening in Russia. We have seen it also in bulk carriers that we enjoy all these good markets, and of course there is a big expectation in front of us for the tanker market. We hope that when consumption comes back to China and in the Far East will be more stabilized due to the restrictions and the lockdowns that we will see from COVID, the demand will be increased, the consumption will be increased, and we will, after 2 years of distressed market, we will see the benefit. Even though that on the smaller sizes, of course, on the products and on the Aframaxes, we have seen, due to the war also, a much better market. So we expect to see that towards the end of the year also in the larger crude carriers. That's basically it.
Thank you. The next question is for Mr. Tsakos and Mr. Economou. If I gave you $100 million, or a little bit more than that, in which sector would you be making an investment?
Well, I'll go before George will spend it very fast. So I'll go first on that. But before I start, I would like to, I think we all should congratulate Nick and Olga, or Olga and Nick, for all the efforts they have made to keep shipping in the limelight over the pandemic period. I think they've done a great job. I remember the Zoom meetings he forced us to attend, and he would not take no for an answer. I was in a COVID-infected environment at the time. My wife was one of the first victims, so we were locked in the house. I could not get anybody to come from the office to prepare the Zoom meetings. But Nick would never take no for an answer. He would keep on insisting. I think it was about the 20th of March, one of you are very interesting. So I was sitting there. You taught me how to use technology. I was sitting there with my little camera trying to look brave, but with my wife coughing on the background. But joking apart, Nick, thank you very much. You've kept us in line. You kept us connected. It would have been very, very difficult without your efforts all these years. So on, first of all, $100 million on your question, Sofia, is getting to be very little in our days in the environment of inflation that we are living. And I'm not joking. I mean, what can you buy with $1 million? You can buy 2/3 of a VLCC, perhaps. You can buy half, if not, an LNG. Perhaps you can buy a mid-sized container, but I think John has bought them all, so there's not much to do in that. And of course, so what is there left? If Petros allows someone to buy, perhaps, so my question will be, I think, fast. I mean, we run a big fleet of energy ships, more than 90 vessels in energy. We are looking to diversify. So perhaps a dual fuel Newcastle Max or Cape would be something that we would do for the next generations to have a much more diversified fleet. So not taking more of your time, I think that is my answer of the week. Thank you.
Thank you, Nico. George?
Thank you. I'm glad to be here because Nico started with me when I started dry ships, and we started together with Petros with less than $1 million back in '86. And we didn't have anything else to do but start with a bulk carrier. That's what was available at the time. It was an 11-year-old bulk carrier with a Pilstick engine and a derricks, so nobody else wanted it. We got it and we started. What do you do today with $100 million? I think you have to understand that if you are a new company, you will not get much financing. So that puts a restriction. It's not as if I start with $100 million, I would probably do different things. So I think the first thing to look is the next 3 years, always cash flow. So you want to protect your downside. And I'm pretty convinced that the dry bulk market is going to be good for the next 3 years at least. So I would start with bulk carriers. And Anthony Zolotas, I've known from university, back in the day when he started, he told me, the best investment is a 7-year-old Japanese ship. It's still a good investment, but I would even go older than that and would buy bigger and older capes, which we have done. Now, the question is, how much money do you have? I think there's the tanker sector, but it's more difficult to predict. I mean, everybody was hoping in July of 2020 the market would turn in a few months. It's been 23 months that we had on the VLs below OPEX, and the Suezmax is a little bit above. The Aframax have done a little better recently, so it's not an easy decision. But at the same time, if you want to progress in business, you have to look forward. LNG is probably good, or a container probably, if you have long-term employment. The question is the chicken and egg situation. You cannot buy a ship with the employment, so you have to take a risk. So the question is appetite of risk. But I would definitely say the bulk carriers is one, and then maybe you want to make a couple of orders of LNGs, but that's going to cost a lot of money, and you hope you will get a charter and 80% financing. The LNGs, the problem is the technical management. So it's more challenging today, but if you want to be safe, you start with bulk carriers.
So there are types of vessels we can buy at 100 million, I guess.
We agree.
Well, you can buy old bulk carriers, and scrap financing is 6%. You get 50% in the bank, and you take cash in, and then you pick your next move.
Okay, thank you. The next question is to Mr. Procopiou. Greek ship owners are known for their astute operations and their asset traders. So where do you see the opportunities today, in second-hand markets or new buildings?
Thank you. Thank you very much for your question. But first, I want to thank Mr. Bornozis and Olga for arranging this opportunity. Also, I have to say a big thank you to the crews, our crews that kept the lines open over these 2.5 years, and the disruption was minimal, and the lockdown helped a lot. People frustrated to order through Amazon, and the container market went through the roof. These were the consequences of the lockdown. But since your question is about investment, we have first to realize the world we are living in. So we are living in a world that the desirable became the target, and the doable was ignored. It was ignored for many years before the invasion of Russia, and for the last 3.5 years, no investment was permitted or encouraged to fossil fuels. Due to every leader pointing to Plan B, but Plan B was not in place. So they were abandoning Plan A without having Plan B in place. So the desirable was confused with the doable, and we ran to the $100 per barrel and $60 per MMBTU of gas price before the invasion. This has to be in our minds. So first is we should focus to the doable and not to the desirable. Secondly, after the invasion, we have a new reality. A new world is before us, and never will be the same as before. We in Europe, as my friend Evangelos stated, touched upon, we are shooting our foot, we Europeans, and the only winner of this is China and maybe India, even not intentionally. So we believe that, going back to your question, that shipping is a matter of operating ships, and as addition is buying and selling. You must have a good name in operating ships to be accepted by the charterers at high level and very demanding, especially on LNG carriers, tankers, and leisure and bulkers. But meantime, you can enjoy buying and selling at the right moment. What I would do now, definitely up to the moment that technology is settled and we don't have these fiction stories about hydrogen and batteries and all these, or even natural gas, which cost 6 times for the same equivalent of thermal power. That means instead of $1,000 per ton, that is the price today of fuel, you have to pay $5,000 to $6,000. Even with 1,000, we can make the ends meet. You can imagine with 6 times, 5 times more expensive. So if I'm very eager to do something, I would definitely concentrate on second-hand ships, and I'll wait technology to settle down and to be tested and not to be the guinea pig to go to the next day. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is to Mr. Pappas. Shipping is a vital link to global supply chain. We've heard that. Does the global economic and geopolitical environment create commercial opportunities for closer cooperation with cargo owners across all segments?
Thank you, Sofia. Let me also thank Capital Link and the Bornozis family for having us here. It's always very nice to attend your conferences. Sofia, I love your hairstyle.
Thank you.
Please surprise us every time we see you. Also, I have to say that this $100 million, you came in 36 years late. If you had given that to George and I in 1986 when we started our JV, we would have bought 65 vessels. Today we buy a couple. So I'm sorry about that, but it should have been a bit earlier. You weren't born then, of course.
Thank you again.
You said that shipping is vital. I think shipping is the elephant in the transportation room. And actually, we don't have a strong voice, despite the fact that if we stop, the world stops. So we have to do something about that in the future. Now, as to the question, I actually thought hard over the weekend. Why would global economics and geopolitical environment would get us closer to cargo interests? I didn't find an answer, but what I can answer is that environmental regulation will get us closer, because I think that a number of market players, ship owners, charterers, cargo interests, governments, shipyards, etc., engine manufacturers, will have to get together to be able to achieve the final result. So I think environmental policies, alliances, and partnerships with them will get us closer to them. But that's it.
I think it's fair to say that that's probably going to be a key decider, both on how they work with suppliers and how you as shipping companies are working with them to promote these sustainability targets. The next question is to Mr. Coustas and to Mr. Tsakos too. Both of you can reply, but first, Mr. Coustas, do you see more opportunities operating across many sectors, as many of you have multi-sector businesses, or a single sector where we see Wall Street preferring listed companies actually having only one sector?
Thanks as well, to the Bornozis family for all their support to the Greek community, not just here in Greece, but also in the US, where it's really we source our capital. I think that as far as investors are concerned, obviously everyone wants to choose independently the sector they want to invest in. Investors do not like mixed bags. And that's why companies that operate in multiple sectors, definitely they have not seen any, let's say, advantage. I don't know how significant a disadvantage is going to be because there are not really many. But if one really wanted to go into this market, I would definitely suggest, if they want to have independent companies in each sector. I mean, one of the companies that went, in this direction was Mr. Petros with, when he broke into his companies, was the only, let's say, example of such a division, and that in the long run has definitely proved beneficial. I don't know, Nikos?
Well, I think you are a prime example of very devoted to your segment, and you have gone through thick and thin with big success, and congratulations to you. We have not invented the right recipe in our case. I mean, even our public company, which runs about 75 energy carriers, we call them tankers, is diversified anywhere from VLCCs down to product carriers, LNGs, shuttle tankers. It is not considered one division share company because we are diversified, and sometimes we are criticized because of that. We are almost split between products and crude, but at the end of the day, it has to do with the bottom line. So we are always, being public, we are always very worried to satisfy the needs of our shareholders, but the main need is to make the company have long-term success. Like all of us, we've been around for many, many years. Shipping is a marathon, and sometimes diversification, I think, assists in that. On the other hand, going forward, I am not sure, unfortunately, how sustainable the tanker business is going to be, and I think we have other people here that have their own opinions. So we have to try and have a foot in the containers, as we do, have a foot in dry cargo, and try at the end to make it all work. So I am much more on the diversified model than your very successful model.
As you were talking, I was going back 20 years ago during one of the IPOs, the Greek IPOs that I was working on, and how the company started with a multi-sector, and then how the valuation ended up being more beneficial to do it as a one sector. And as I was writing this question down, I was thinking 20 years down the line, we're in a changing world. But what I'm hearing is that investors are still thinking that one sector is what, where the values are. I'll take that back with me. The next question is to Mr. Pappas. I want to start off by saying that EY is already carbon negative. And we've actually set a goal by 2025 to be net zero. So we've heard about the importance of climate change, how the temperature is increasing, and this particular risk is not going to go away. So all businesses, and that's why I mentioned ourselves as a service company, we are setting goals, and we're holding our people and our partners to meeting those goals. Now, looking at the shipping industry, and this is again to Mr. Pappas, what are the key parameters for setting decarbonization strategy for shipping companies? And how would this affect your investment and fleet renewal decisions?
Thank you, Sofia. There are 5 parameters. First, is that we should know what the new green fuels are going to be. Is going to be ammonia, methanol, biofuels, nuclear energy. So that is one very important issue, of course, and it has not been yet decided. Then once we know that, we need to have the vessels that have the right engines and the right configuration to be able to carry to burn these fuels. Thereafter, we need adequate supply of the fuels, infrastructure. We need adequate quantities of these fuels. I was hearing the other day someone say that if you're going to produce green ammonia, you need 85,000 square meters, 80,000 square kilometers of area to be able to cover the needs of one container ship of 22,000 TEUs. Mykonos is 89,000 square kilometers. So you need a Mykonos for one vessel. Yeah. No, actually, Mykonos is 89. We have four square kilometers left for the beaches. And then at the end, the last thing is that the prices should be competitive. Everybody's criticizing shipping right now that we are contributing to inflation. Imagine when the fuel oils will be double or triple, I don't know what the price. Overall, I personally think that it will take the better part of the next decade to be able to fulfill all these requirements. Now, what can we do in the meantime? What we do is we participate in organizations, forums, we follow the developments, we try to contribute on R&D where we can. We actually teamed up with three main charters, BHP, Rio Tinto, and Oldendorf, and we created a green corridor consortium, which will use Capes or Newcastlemaxes from Australia to East Asia. And the idea is that the production of ammonia, because that's probably what this corridor will use, will be done in Australia, and therefore the vessels to be built will bunker once and do the round trip. And of course, we have to build the vessels for that, and to be able to do that investment, we need the charters at a decent return on investment. We will see how that works. There's other green corridors, I think on the container side, etc. So there are some moves, and we're trying to be there. The immediate practical thing we're doing is basically to effect operational and technical improvements on our existing vessels to be able to comply with the coming EEXI and CII regulations. We don't have any intentions to build new buildings, because if the delivery, let's say, is at 25 or 26, and the new engines come in 28, 29, immediately the vessels may be second-class citizens. So we will stay with our older fleet and try to improve its efficiency as much as possible.
Thank you, Petros. And the next question is to Mr. Procopiou and Mr. Marinakis. You talked a little bit around the Ukraine war, but COVID actually, in addition to the Ukraine war, have brought in certain challenges when it comes to crewing, whether it's costs or additional safety costs. So which costs do you believe are here to stay, and how are you addressing these challenges?
As far as the crewing is concerned, among Ukrainians and Russians, I think that we have around 12-13% of the global crewing. So that's a significant amount. We have been involved as a company with both Ukrainians and Russians. When the war started, we took a number of measures to ensure, especially for the Ukrainians and their families, to protect and to help to assist as much as possible and provide them a safe housing, and also to help them moving families out from the area and assist them in whatever they needed. On the other hand, we had to be careful because we had, and we still have ships that they have mixed crew, Ukrainians and Russians together. So far, we haven't faced any serious problem, but I think that the more this war continues, it's a matter of time when we'll face some problems. That's why we have started the process of separating them. And of course, as far as COVID is concerned, we learned a lot of things, and for the well-being of the crew on board and the test that we had to do on sometimes even on daily occasions, and of course the repatriation, and it was a major issue, and of course that was an extra major expense. And of course we had to take also measures as far as the food and the nutrition on board that had to be improved, and have a healthy crews. So, it was a challenging time, and as Mr. Procopiou mentioned earlier, we have to thank our crews because it was difficult times, and it was untested territories for all of us with the COVID situation, that everybody had to be cooperative, patient. We had also crews that stayed for several months over the contract because they couldn't be repatriated. And of course, on the other hand, gave us the power and the right to be able to operate, because in some occasions that was not possible. So we need to thank them and also do things for them for the future in order to be safe and protected. That's basically what we need to say for as far as the crew is concerned. And as I mentioned earlier, of course, COVID, due to the fact that the majority of the people were inside the house with the lockdown, first of all, they didn't spend the money for holidays or for restaurants or for their daily routine. And being in the houses, they had to order things and goods. And of course, we saw this impact in the container market and on the dry cargo market in some occasions that changed the fundamentals of the market. And of course, we saw the market rocketing. And as far as the war is concerned, again, we have seen different origins as far as the cargo is coming from the usual destination that was Russia. Of course, that creates opportunities, and we need to be able to take advantage of these opportunities because at the end of the day, when we'll all be stabilized, we might face different markets. So that's basically what.
Thank you. Mr. Procopiou, anything to add?
Yes, I would like to say that as an example, during the first, from January up to now, we have taken delivery of 5 new building Suezmaxes in China, and we had to put a Chinese crew because of the tough restrictions in China, and to go to Korea, change this crew with the normal crew, which we kept 1 month there, and for 2 months the Chinese have to stay. So the delivery of the ship costed more than $500,000. These changes for one crew to the other crew and familiarization and so on. But what I want to say, as I said also before, that the dedication and the cooperation with the crews during the COVID period was impressive. So in overall, we have not seen problems with the ships. There were more problems on the ports and the lorries outside and the all auxiliary support to the ports on logistics. The ships themselves, they went on time and they loaded and they went to discharge port on time. Now, talking about the disruption of Russia and Ukraine conflict, it was the biggest miscalculation of the century. And the commodity prices, we are still in the beginning of the disruption. And the good thing for shipping is the ton miles. This is a tragedy for the humanity, but this at the same time creates opportunities. The ton miles definitely are going to be increased immensely. Cargoes that were going next door by the pipeline will be loaded to go to China. Cargoes that they were staying in the Far East and India will come to Europe. It is an amazing rewriting shipping lanes, and we must have this in mind, how to turn the mishap to opportunity. Coming to the restrictions and sanctions have never worked. The Iranians became stronger and better to be self-sufficient. The Venezuelans are suffering much more. The elite is always having good time. So if you are spending all your energy for the bread to bring home, you don't have your mind in revolutions and in changes of regimes. When you have a half full or full stomach, then you have all this luxury for chasing and change and so on. So I don't believe this attitude, but at least my recommendation and demand is to be clear what is allowed and what is not, because we are living in a gray area all the time, what is legal, what is illegal, and we see banks and insurers becoming more strict than the regulations are, and creates a lot of misunderstandings. So I do believe that the time for VLCCs is coming, and by the end of the year we will see very, very good markets in all segments. I'm very optimistic, and as nobody wants to be a guinea pig in ordering ships, the ships will last for longer and will command much higher prices, as we see already, and all the regulations will adapt to the new reality, because without ships we will turn off the lights, the transportation, the refrigeration, everything. So, and thanks God that Greece provides shipping for whole Europe. So As I said in Germany, when we were signing that famous contract, I said as we are proud of the German car industry, car making auto industry, and we are proud because it's the European car industry, you have to be proud for the Greek shipping, which is the European shipping, and don't see it with half an eye and trying all the time to find excuses to put obstacles in Greek shipping. So this is my assessment for what we are now in.
Thank you, Mr. Procopiou. I actually was taking note as you were talking, but what I really liked, the comment you made, with challenges, there's an increase in opportunities. And we've seen that both in Greek shipping and in the Greek finance world in the last 10, 15 years, that with challenges, people become more innovative, opportunities are there, and we have entrepreneurs are able to capture those opportunities and really make big wins. The next question I would say goes to Mr. Economou. So do you think that the current regulations, which includes also environmental, are appropriate and fair for the shipping industry? And what do you see as a potential major concern or challenge that is coming your way, meaning to the shipping industry?
I don't believe that there's fairness in life. So it is what it is. I think we have to navigate like a sailor that sets out to sea and encounters good weather, bad weather, damages, and so on and so forth. I think the problem is that there's too many voices and there's not one direction. If you remember back in the day when the Exxon Valdez happened in '89, the Americans came out with the OPA 90, which allowed 25 years for the conversion of single hull to double hull. Same thing should be happening in many areas that the regulators are involved. The problem is that the people that take decisions, the regulatory bodies, are not versed at all in the shipping developments, and therefore they take the wrong decisions, and they want something yesterday or tomorrow, and this isn't going to be happening. The problem with the fuels has to be solved by the people that are providing the fuels. You cannot expect a person that you've given a diesel engine 3 years later to tell him, now you have to turn this into an electric engine. You cannot do it. He has to sell that to buy another one. So, and it's going to continue. And unfortunately, we live in an environment where people are, it's like the younger kids with the iPhones. They get confused. Too much information, they don't know which direction to go. Is this going to be solved? No. But if there's somebody that can solve it, it's the oil companies. They don't have an incentive because they're sitting on oil and gas, and that's what they will promote.
Thank you. I think we can go to, I'm trying to put a theme because I really enjoyed your answers, and I think there's a theme here, so I'm going to maybe change a little bit some of the questions so we can have a continuation. We talked around regulations, and we said around the environment and with respect to the changes that are taking place and how this is going to impact the business. So the next question is to Mr. Tsakos. So sustainability is becoming a key measure, and we heard it in a previous panel for stakeholders. We saw lenders actually providing more favorable borrowing terms to, depending on ESG performance. Regulators, both the US and Europe, are really creating ESG pronouncements and standards. And so there's going to be a lot more disclosure, a lot more transparency, a lot more reporting around that. And investors are incorporating ESG in their investment decisions, right? So how prepared is the shipping industry in meeting stakeholders' expectations? And what do you think companies should be doing to comply and prepare for?
Thank you, Sofia. Well, I think that over the centuries, shipping has actually given back to society without having a title. So I think we are used to give back to society. We are used to give back to the environment. We have been in the forefront of changes. I think George mentioned the double-double design, which was a design that the whole tanker industry had to absorb financially without any grants or any help, which is very unlike of what is happening in land or on air-based businesses. So now we have a name for it. I think the companies that are here are companies that have very good housekeeping. Most of us been public for decades, but it's not only the housekeeping we're interested, is the actual giving back, either back to the environment, either back to society, or having a much more diverse way of doing business. So I am very optimistic that shipping is in the forefront. And as George said, I mean, we are navigating the difficulties. I do not see we have been through much worse than something like this. So I think we are prepared. I mean, again, my concern is not so much on our environmental, social conscious, as I call it, ESC I call it, because I think this conscious is very much embedded mainly in Greek shipping. I think if you look at the biggest providers of charity around our country have been people from a shipping background. So I think this is natural. For us, the sustainability, I go back to what I mentioned earlier, has to do with in our business where we transport energy, how long this model will be around for, and what energy will be transporting. I mean, we have been one of the early movers in the LNG. We, I think, took delivery of our first LNG in 2007. And because we have a diversified company, I never felt comfortable with technologies that changed quicker than my iPhone. I mean, I still have the same iPhone I had some time ago, but by the time we took delivery of our first LNG, technology had moved to the second. By the time we did our third LNG, by the fourth time we had third. So, you know, we are looking for change, but we would like to see the dust settled in technology, because the depreciation of those assets, of the early generation assets, is immense and much more than what they will make in a very short lifespan. Yeah, I think we should not be the first movers. Is it going to be methanol, ethanol, or whatever? Ammonia. But in the meantime, we have to run a business, and I think this reminds me that a verse, I think from John Lennon, that says, "Life is what happens to you when you're busy making future plans." And I think that's what we are right now into shipping. I mean, things are happening. We need to run our business. We need to feed the world. We need to warm the world up. But in the meantime, we are busy also thinking of the future. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is to Mr. Coustas, and we're going to go into financing. And there's no, I think, panel discussion around shipping that we don't bring the topic of financing. So banks remain a significant force for lending, but we have also seen Chinese leasing and alternative financing. So what, in your viewpoint, is the current financial landscape opportunities for the shipping industry?
Yes, thank you. There is no doubt that we had also the presentation before from BOCOM that the Chinese leasing sector has substituted to a significant extent the lack of capital provided by the Western banks. We have seen a significant contraction since 2008. With all the regulation, I don't believe really that the banking market will be really there to support all the needs of the shipping industry. There is no doubt that it will always be there because in general it is the cheapest element. But I don't think that any shipping company that wants to grow can rely purely on banks. We have, of course, the leasing model. The leasing model is extremely interesting, but in general it is expensive. So, of course, it gives you significant leverage. But when you are, let's say, on a downside, that might present difficulties. Personally, I'm very much in favor of the public debt markets, the bond markets, especially the US bond markets that do not really have any limit in terms of size. It's always there at a price and very quickly. The problem, of course, that you have over there, mainly in terms of disclosures and things like that, make it rather unattractive for private companies. But for public companies that have all the necessary disclosure in place, I think that access to this market can give a significant tool for capital that has minimum covenants, is available very quickly when you're going to need it. And as I said, it's in general at a price, it's always available. So this is, I believe, the mix that we can see today. There are a lot of smaller banks coming to fulfill, let's say, the lowest end, the smaller companies that require financing. That is becoming more and more difficult. And as Mr. Economou said before, really, small companies have really to assume either cash financing or financing at pretty conservative levels, 50, 40%, sometimes even 30%. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is to Mr. Pappas, and we're going to go into something that's a little bit futuristic, at least in my mind, but it's happening. So certain shipping companies have increased their investments in offshore power production vessels. So we, like Scorpio, switched their focus from dry bulk to offshore wind sector, and they're constructing a wind turbine installation vessel, WTIV. In your view, what is driving ship owners towards such changes? And is this something we shall see or expect the Greek ship owners to be investing in?
Thank you, Sofia. I don't know if my friend Emanuele is in the room. I think that short-term, divesting the dry vessels before the market went up wasn't that a great investment. However, medium-term or long-term, he's amassing experience on promising environmental technologies, and that will probably be beneficial to him. Now, one thing that's important, pioneers may be the first and may gain, but they also undertake the risks of being pioneers. And in my view, Greek ship owners like to do what they know to do best. On the other hand, of course, we are daring people, to say the least. And when we see an opportunity where there are good probabilities of success, then we will try it out. But I don't think we will be the Christopher Columbus's discovering America. We will follow right after. And for our Scandinavian friends here, I know the Vikings discovered America first.
In some history. Thank you. The next question, let's go to Mr. Marinakis. So we talked around all the conflicts, the challenges, but there's a term that is being used, or at least we're beginning to think of it as having a more of a disruptive impact in our lives, which is deglobalization. So about 10, 15, 20 years ago, we saw huge multinationals wanting to globalize, right? Economies of scale, finding the best resources, locations. I mean, global firms were probably where everybody wanted to be to create. But now, because of all the challenges disrupted, whether it's COVID or the geopolitical, we're hearing a lot of governments talking about interdependence, not having to be interdependent on other nations. So deglobalization, how would this impact the shipping industry, and should shipping companies be doing something today to prepare?
I think that what you mentioned is very interesting, and answering your question, it will mean that our industry is even more interesting. What you say that, first of all, the world is growing, the population is growing. That means that we have extra demands, and not only this, that is growing. In big countries like China and India, the demands and the requirements of this population again is increasing, and they don't live as they used to live many years with minimum requirements. So that means that again, this creates opportunities. The countries, they have to produce more and consume more. What we have seen during COVID is that the West has been dependent a lot in China, in the Far East, for various vital products and materials that are used for medicine, are used for chips for computers and for telephones. And we realized all of a sudden that we had to do something and start producing ourselves, because you can be very vulnerable in a crisis. All this, of course, and if this starts in Europe, that means that you have to import another material in order to be able to produce this. So that's why shipping is interesting, because of all these opportunities and all these different patterns and different cargoes and different requirements that creates more transportation. And of course, we like what we do, and all these changes at the end of the day is challenging for our industry.
Okay, thank you.
Can I make just a
Sure.
small comment of that?
Yes.
Taking on what, continuing on what Evangelos said. Today, everybody, has a dream, and politicians that say, okay, we're going to transfer production back. If you look around, look in the US, where is the workforce to do that? I mean, it's already, at record low unemployment. I mean, in Europe as well, unemployment is extremely low historically, and the people actually who are unemployed are not definitely the ones who will be able to participate in the production process. So I don't think really, I think that strategically what happens is not onshoring. I mean, people here have been looking at Russia and at the pandemic at the same time, where they see they want to diversify the sources of their either energy or products. So the term that people are using is not onshoring, but friend-shoring.
Right.
So they want to transfer production into places that they consider as safer to them politically or otherwise. So I don't think really that shipping is that deglobalization is going to change. It might even in terms of, let's say, transportation and complexity, it's going to be even more demanding.
No, I agree. Thank you. This is a special question, and it's to Mr. Procopiou. I see the time is going to run out in a little while, but I think it's very important we hear from him. Mr. Procopiou has invested in revitalizing a major Greek shipyard. So we would just appreciate if you can share your vision and of this particular project.
This is a question that needs a long answer, but I'll tell you the highlights. The reason that I participate and I won this auction were patriotic motives, nothing else. I felt very disappointed to see this huge installation to be in a dilapidated stage and to lose the high good name that it had. There are many excellent people working in this place that they have a dream to see this place in the glories that they had in the past. It is a difficult challenge. It is a challenge and it's a very difficult one, but I took it because I like challenges first. I know very well the capabilities of Greeks in excelling any other race in doing innovations and to be hard workers. When a place is without an owner and it is managed by politicians for over 25 years, and I do believe that the Greek saying that you must have your nails to scratch your back and you don't expect others to scratch your back. I have a dream to make Greece independent on the shipbuilding for naval assets and submarines as it used to be, and this is my dream. So new technologies give ground to new people to materialize their dreams with new technologies like carbon fiber crafts, unmanned crafts, a lot of in research and in electronics, being able, because when we need and we buy everything and at very high prices, when they are needed, they plug off our friends, so we cannot use it. So it is a big task, I know, and it is a big challenge, but I'll do it. Thank you.
I'm going to clap. So we have 5 more minutes. So, I mean, I have a lot more questions, but I'll try to keep it onto 1 and 2 before we finish. Mr. Economou, let's talk a little bit around what we're seeing as trends, and I just want your views around this. So we're seeing companies merging, spinning off companies, and I would like to hear from you. What are the pros and cons of doing a spin-off or a merger, or do you think the industry needs some form of consolidation?
I think there's a critical level above which you don't increase your income or reduce your expense. That could be 40, 50 ships. A well-run 40, 50 ship company will have better results than one with 150 ships. So that answers this part of the question. The second question about spin-offs, they have to be done if they serve an economic interest. A lot of times people haven't had the experience or they're doing it for other reasons. But if you have a company that has more than one sectors, and you're public, because the investors do focus on pure plays, then that's warranted. I don't know if you want to ask another question on that, but this is basically to keep it short, is you don't have time. 4:13 left.
Thank you. Okay, great. All right. So we have a little bit more time. I think, George, let's leave it at what you basically said, and let's just change a little bit the conversation around innovation. This is open to the entire panel. I want to start off by saying, I'm a kid, Petro, I actually grew up watching reruns, but Star Trek and the Jetsons, and I always thought those were science fiction, futuristic. But a few days ago, I had an opportunity to see EY's version of the metaverse. And for those of you who may or may not know, the internet will be changing in the next few years, and we're going to be working in an environment that's going to be a parallel, a matching to the real environment. So the virtual aspect of what we're going to be seeing, to Zooms and Teams and those types of meetings are going to be a lot more dynamic. You're going to have an avatar, and that avatar is going to wear a Gucci dress and Prada shoes, and you're going to be buying these things online. So there's going to be a lot of innovation as to how businesses are going to be conducted. But to the shipping industry, we heard the previous panels talk around innovations. So what type of investments are needed for digital transformation to transpire? So let's start off with Mr. Marinakis, and we can go down.
Of course, this has nothing to do with shipping, or it has to do with shipping in a small.
No, the metaverse is just an example of where innovation is going to be going in the next few years. But what we heard is also shipping has its own innovations that are needed. We talked around how managing costs, how you're going to be managing your assets and so forth. So just your views as to what type of investments you think are needed around innovations.
I think that what is important, as I said before, is to have our crew safe, well-trained, and well-being on board our ships. There is a number of things that internet and all these digital platforms enables you to do. And as I said earlier, this is from nutrition to give them everything in a platform, to change the menus, also to have training on board and be fit. And of course, all these things can be done digital, and is an example. And I think that is also very important, for these people to perform as best as possible and feel as safe as possible, and also to be satisfied. Digital reforms there help a lot. Also, as far as the digital revolution can help in the consumptions on how we measure the CO2 and how our engines can become more efficient in order to fulfill this goal as much as possible. So all these innovations, of course, can help shipping. And on the other hand, of course, from the money that we make in shipping, we can invest them in other areas that digital reform and digital platforms are needed. I mean, we have done it in Greece with Marketplace, and of course, there is plenty of things that we can do. But I think that the most important thing is that with this access in the internet that everybody has globally, even if you are in the middle of the desert and you have access to internet, you can do things. You can show it to the rest of the world, something that no one had the opportunity to do before. And everybody in this world is able to do something special, to do something that can create unique opportunities.
Thank you. Mr. Coustas?
Well, yeah, definitely technology can give us a lot of tools, I mean, like artificial intelligence, to improve the operational performance of our existing assets. Of course, the biggest challenge in shipping will come with all the research into autonomous ships. I mean, Mr. Procopiou has said, you know, that we are the taxi drivers of the sea. I mean, imagine if tomorrow Uber has its own self-driving cars. They don't need, of course, the taxi drivers, and they can themselves just own the assets and operate them. I mean, for Greek shipping that has been really built around the expertise of training the crews and running the vessels efficiently, definitely this will come as a disadvantage. I don't know how quickly we are going to reach such a stage. It might be premature, but I think in the long run, our biggest challenge is going to be into how really to adapt in a situation that the autonomous ship becomes the norm.
Thank you. Mr. Procopiou?
I'm very much in favor of every innovation, and we try always to innovate, and we try to have new solutions, North Sea route, bigger LNG carriers, various things. But we are giving a wrong message to the new generation. The new generation must understand that without real work, by pressing buttons, they cannot make money. This is a big challenge for our society now, that all the youth expect the heaviest thing to lift is their pen. So we need also real people to do the real work, and this is the biggest challenge. So all these futuristic things that are based in consumerism and what you said is, I believe that they give a wrong message, and we have to come back and to be balanced about what computers, artificial intelligence, all this can deliver, and who is going to build the house, the ship, the road, and do the work. So we have distancing ourselves from this reality, and we see that all production has shifted to the Far East. We are talking now about deglobalization. That means that we have to do it locally. I don't see who is going to do it. It is a huge issue and a huge chapter. So we must find the balance between these two approaches. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tsakos?
Yes, thank you, Sofia. Well, I think it is digitalization and technology should take in consideration the human factor. I think we should not allow our seafarers to become second in the back seat. They have to be able to take responsibility. We're going to offer them whatever technology is there, which is logical for them to be able to have a safer, more economical, more environmental friendly voyage, because I think this is why shipping is going to be around and it's going to be sustainable for many, many more centuries, because whatever you do, it is the most economic, the most environmental friendly, and the most efficient way of moving huge commodities around the world. So, and this will not change. Perhaps the commodities that we will move might change, but of course there will be enough of them to be carried around in a growing world. I think we have every single year 75 million people additional population. That's a country the size of Germany. The population is in this world every single year. So I think we are there as taxi drivers or whatever you call it, or truck drivers, as I said, to continue going forward. So technology has to go hand with real seamanship. We cannot, I do not believe, I believe there might be lesser crews. I believe we might go down from 24, 25 seafarers down to perhaps 14, 15, much more educated, much more up with technology. But I think seamanship is still going to be important, and that will what will keep the Greek shipping at the edge in comparison with anything else.
Thank you, Mr. Tsakos. Mr. Pappas?
I'm afraid that technologically I'm even behind Nikos here because he has an old iPhone and I still have a BlackBerry.
That's a museum item. Congratulations.
I think that our task right now is to concentrate on what our major issue is. And our major issue is environmental. So we have to follow environmental innovation and embrace the technology breakthroughs once they're proven. I think this is our main issue as far as technologies go, and everything else is of less importance. As far as digital transformation is concerned, I think an important thing is that the technology companies should cooperate with shipping companies so that they create something that we understand, something that saves money or creates opportunities for profits or saves time or whatever, practical results. If they operate in parallel with us, we will probably not use what they will come up with. And one thing we should also not forget is that with that technology, cyber risk come in, and we have to take care of them because they could create severe problems in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Economou?
I think there's no doubt that innovation, digitalization will be very useful in making shipping operations more efficient. Now, I have a dream, and people like mysteries and surprises and the unknown. And what I'm doing now, and this is not known, we created a platform. So my dream is that we put assets on board, and we started with the first ship, and then this platform works on Algorand and blockchain, and then anybody could buy a small part. It's not an NFT, not to be confused, it's real assets. And I hope that we will be able to develop further and get clients, because the problem is not develop technologies. How do you get, as they call traffic, which is assets on board and people to go for it. And I think this is going to happen in a lot of industries around the world. It's happening already. The problem is the regulatory environment, because for the time being, most of this is allowed for institutional investors. My dream is to make it for retail investors. So.
That's
They had the dream, didn't last very long.
Well, I hope that they have no reason. I'm not a political animal. I'm agnostic.
I would like to make a question to the audience the other way around of usually. Am I allowed?
Yes, please.
I want all of you to think who is to blame for the pollution of a taxi, the driver or the passenger? For your own guidance. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to be closing it. We already took 10 minutes of your time, but I felt that this was really, as I said, one of my favorite parts of the event. And just listen to so many experienced Greek ship owners talking around these topics. So, gentlemen, thank you. Thank you for your insights and how and explaining to us how these challenges can really become opportunities, and how the Greek ship owners are really looking at the challenges and adapting themselves to actually win. So thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a pleasant day and for the rest of the event. Thanks.